Welcome back to Management Diaries. I'm your host, Denile Doyle. Thanks for joining me. Before we get into today's episode, if you work in property management and want to stay on top of what's happening in multifamily, make sure you're subscribed to the MHN Property Management newsletter. That's where we break down trends, share practical insights, and go a little deeper on the topics we talk about on the show. You can find the link in the show notes. Renewals are never as simple as a renewal notice goes out, the resident decides whether to stay or move out, and then the property team moves on. There are so many layers to renewals. For operators, there are financial implications. We're talking about increases, we're talking about concessions, occupancy, and for residents, there are multiple layers as well. Today, Matt Guenther joins me. Matt is the Executive Vice President of Operations at Village Green. Village Green is a national operator managing over 50,000 units. Matt and I, we're going to talk about what's happening in that decision window, what residents are weighing, and even some things that might compromise retention. Matt, welcome, and thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Denile. I really appreciate the opportunity. Looking forward to our conversation.
So you started as a property manager at the site level. So you understand the significance of renewals and how much that's important to an owner-operator. There are so many more things to consider now. Pricing pressures, residents have different expectations, there's more data, and we're going to spend a lot of time talking about the resident side. But first, I want us to talk about what operators are facing right now. When you think about renewals today, what's different?
Like you said, I've been in the industry about 20 years, started as a property manager. 2005 is when I started on site. And I remember having those conversations with my regional manager, area director. And oftentimes it was as simple as one bedrooms are going up $10 and two bedrooms are going up $20. And just to see how much that's changed over the years to how we're operating today, where either you're using AI models or algorithms to set that pricing and really digging into the details of each unit and maximizing your pricing that way, while also, as we're going to talk about more, keeping that retention in mind. So that's really where it's changed a lot. And on the resident front too, really their access to information is one of the biggest changes from when I first got started in the industry, where they can just simply go on their phone, see what all the comps in the area are charging, and even see what we're doing with new prospects as far as move-in specials and things like that. So it makes it challenging, and our property managers really need to be well equipped with the market information and the goals of the owner and the property so that we can really maximize retention and maximize income for the property.
I love that you said you really are digging into the details, right? You have to do that even more so now because there are more things in the mix, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the process has really changed on both sides. When the resident gets a renewal notice, what's going through their head beyond, okay, I'll stay, I'll renew, or I won't renew and I'll leave?
A lot of people are really internalizing the decision. So their first step is really, wow, I can't believe 1 year is over already. And what is my plans for the next year? And is it still aligned with what their plans were when they moved in? But once they get through that initial internal decision, they're really doing like a value calculation, like how much is my rent going to go up? Or did they even know rent most likely will go up when you go up for renewal? And then after that, the value is really, have I had a good experience here? Have I been taken care of? Is this process going to be frustrating or is this going to be easy? And that's really where our touch points throughout the year are so impactful. We don't want them to be almost dreading the decision as it comes up.
I can definitely attest to the first thing that goes through your mind. Can't believe 1 year has already gone by. Like, wow, it's time already.
Yeah, I wish I didn't move in January.
Or in my case, December.
Yeah.
For residents, there's the timing, there's the value calculation, is this going to be an easy process or is it going to be frustrating, right? How many of these boxes can I check to make it worth, like how much is the rent going to go up? You even said, do they even know there will be a rent increase, right?
Yeah, you'd be surprised, especially if you have a younger demographic. A lot of times they just don't understand that it's a normal part of our business and really housing costs in general. But you're just almost naive. It's like I rented for $1,000. I assumed it'd be $1,000 till whenever I decided to move. So sometimes there's an education to it as well.
Another thing to think about with timing, I'd love to get your take on that. When is that renewal earned or lost? Is it 90 days before the lease ends? Is it move in day? Is it after the first maintenance request? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't think there's really a specific moment that it's won or lost. It's a series of different experiences they've had throughout their time living in our communities. But I think there's two real critical ones. The most important, in my opinion, is the move in experience. I think that really sets the tone of how your stay is going to be here. The positive spin I can put on that as an operator, if it is for some reason bad, at least we have almost a whole year to try to make it up. But really, I think that's the key. A great move in experience because they were sold by a great sales consultant on what it's going to be like living at this community. And we can fall on our face right off the bat if we start off bad. So I think that's key. And once you get over that hurdle, the next most important is the first time they either have some sort of service request or a problem that they had to speak with the property manager about. And how did we resolve that? I think if we get over those two hurdles, then you're really ahead of the game as far as it relates to them renewing in the future.
Yeah, great point. If they didn't have a great move-in experience, you do have a year to really make sure everything about their experience is much better, right? So, I mean, we haven't lost them just.
Yeah, don't give up would be my positive note.
And then to your point, the leasing consultant has an influence on them. And if they put in a service request, those are the touch points, right? Touch points seem like they're very important.
Yes, definitely. Every time they have any sort of request or even come to a community event, those are the impact times. Even though they live with us a year, a lot of times you might only interact with them a handful of times throughout that whole year. With other industries where it might be a hotel stay or going to a restaurant, you're constantly in contact with that customer. In ours, there can be very big gaps in between. And it does vary from property style to, urban high rises. There's a lot more face to face, especially if you have a concierge team. But on those garden style communities, they might live in a building that's at the opposite end from the clubhouse and they just come in from work into that first building. And if they don't have issues, they might not interact a ton with you. And those are sometimes kind of scary in a way as far as it relates to renewals because you don't know and you really want to press your managers to get out in the community, get involved, get to know everyone so that it diminishes that unknown a little bit.
To kind of be seen, right? Now, Matt, what about how you deliver the renewals? Does it make a difference how you present that to residents?
I do think there is. We really encourage our managers to make the initial contact via phone or email. And we like to brand more as like a happy anniversary opposed to your renewals ending. It's more, let's celebrate you being here for 1 year is how we kind of kick it off on a positive note and encourage dialogue first so that we can understand what their wants and needs are coming into this renewal time period and try to tailor our approach to what their needs are. Sometimes residents aren't super responsive. So then the backup method is some of those more formal letters that we're sending at those different touch points in the timeline. But I find best retention is if we start with a face-to-face and I know people are busy, so that's not always possible, but even a Zoom call or a phone call is better than just letters, where you're not getting that back and forth communication right off the bat.
I just think about the difference between a Zoom call and a letter, right? A letter, you can read it and then kind of toss it to the side. I mean, there's so much that you don't get to see. You don't get an understanding.
Yeah, exactly.
Hi, listeners. We cover a lot here on the podcast. If you're enjoying these conversations, make sure you're also subscribed to the MHN Property Management newsletter, where we share even more insights. What would you say is the biggest reason that residents stay that you might not get from a survey?
What residents want when they move into communities is how easy are you making my day-to-day life? They don't want anything to be a challenge where they're living. They're asking questions like, is paying my rent easy? Is submitting a work order easy? Is it easy to get my packages? Or is my property set up where the package can be set right at my front door, just like if I was living in a home? And really things as small as, do I like my neighbors? I think really impacts their decision. And that's where technology plays such a large role, how much those resident portals make things just so simple at a touch of a button. They can really take care of almost everything, including the renewal if they want to, just right from their phones, office, or wherever they may be. Also, one thing I don't think surveys necessarily tell, and I'm speaking from personal experience, is generally people hate moving. It's like the worst chore. It's expensive. Sometimes you got to get friends involved to help you out. A lot of times I don't feel the surveys really show that. What they're really wanting to know is, can they trust if they put in a request that their management team is going to take care of it? That's what it really boils down to.
They want an easy path, right? A simplified path to a lot of these daily kind of habits, right? You said, do I like my neighbors? Like that could also be a consideration. How do you address that as an operator?
Anyone that's been in this industry knows, like, I think you're a part-time psychologist and counselor. It's amazing. I remember being on site, the type of issues or problems that residents would bring to you, where when I'm like a 20-something-year-old, I was like, really? Like, I'm solving this? So I think that conflict resolution, if it gets to that point, is just having those meetings, but really more from the building a community and the positive side. Do I get along with my neighbors? Do I make sure they're going to the pool party or, wind down Wednesdays? And if you start to develop relationships with the people that live right around you and nearest to you, that's very impactful and really can be a deciding decision in staying longer somewhere.
How often is it that they actually give the real reason why they're moving out?
Depends on the resident, really. Some of them, if they've had a bad experience, want to make sure that's why they're moving. And there's other types of people, which are the harder ones to satisfy, are the ones that don't let you know they're unhappy with their stay. So you get left wondering or even surprised at the end that I called in a work order 6 months ago and no one ever fixed it, but I never called back again. Those are the ones that are really disheartening, because we dropped the ball of one, not providing that service that we live up to, and doubling down by not following up properly to make sure we addressed their concern and that they were satisfied.
That's a great point. You don't want to be surprised, right? That scenario that you used as an example, it's like there was a point where kind of the trust was broken, but you don't even know that it happened, right? Where it's too late for you to say, okay, we can fix this.
Mm-hmm. It's really the worst case scenario. That's where that kind of human contact and doing that a good 90 to 120 days before expiration of the lease, I think is a way to help, because most people don't have their new plans 4 months in advance of their lease expiration. So if that's your first touch point and I'm, reaching out to you, hi, Denile, how has your stay been? Hopefully, at least at that point, you'd be like, hey, I have a work order you guys never addressed. And then that gives us that opportunity to be, well, I'll get someone there today, apologize, obviously, make that up, and then maybe go a little bit above, not maybe, you should go a little above and beyond at that point. Whether it's maybe you buy them a gift card to a nice restaurant in the area and just really doubling down on how much you value them. And yes, we did make a mistake in the past, but this is, we want to make sure that you've been heard and that we can address this, because we'd love to have you continue staying with us.
Yeah, I'm going to say, Matt, so what happened? You guys dropped the ball. You didn't fix my work order. The technician never came. What happened? And then when you say, someone's coming today, plus you throw in a gift card and, I like to eat. So I'd be like, oh, okay, you really are trying,
Yeah,
So,
maybe it was just a one-off.
right, exactly. And saying maybe we do something above and beyond to, no, we definitely do, right?
Mm-hmm. You don't want your primary plan to be reactively trying to correct things in that last 4 months, but at least it gives you one more opportunity before a decision might be final.
With affordability challenges and operating costs rising, how should operators think about renewal increases? Is there a point where pushing rents too aggressively can work against occupancy and retention?
We all know that affordability for housing has been a national conversation for quite some time now. I think there always been reflecting what's happening in our market and very justifiable on why the rent has gone to that amount. And a lot of that is driven by the expense growth as well, from taxes, payroll, insurance. All those costs have been going up, which is driving some of that rental increase. However, I do think some property owners can occasionally develop a little bit of tunnel vision around being too focused on average rent per unit or price per square foot. And in some cases, I think it's a more effective approach to focus on maintaining higher occupancy by taking maybe a little bit more conservative approach on the renewal increases. I really think a lot of times the rents being a little more conservative support higher resident retention. And then ultimately, I think that has a bigger impact on the bottom line of managing for occupancy sometimes over just purely focused on the rent growth per unit. I think also a lot of people miss how much that turnover really impacts your expense growth, which is what a lot of operators are so focused on, is how to control costs or even reduce costs. And a great way to do that is have higher retention, where you can potentially reduce staffing levels, you can reduce advertising, reduce turnover costs. All those things add up, and sometimes focusing on the retention can outweigh that little extra bit of rent growth in the short term, especially in a market like we're in right now. That's where you have to rely on your market knowledge, how things are going, and making the most prudent choice on that is, can we push rents and keep occupancy higher? But it can be a very effective approach to be a little bit more conservative on the renewal side of things, because it has such an impact on all your different expense line items.
20 plus years ago, you started as a property manager. So thinking back to when you first started at Village Green, then, is there anything from that first role that still influences you?
I started at Village Green as a manager in training for 4 years. And then my now wife and I decided to move to Denver, Colorado. There, I worked for Widener. Then we moved back to Michigan. I returned to Village Green. So I've been 4 years and 15 years at Village Green. And I did our manager in training program, which is like a 6-month kind of crash course in property management, where they would pair us up with some of the more senior property managers. And I was at a property called the Village Green of Waterford that Village Green had owned and managed at that time for probably 20, 30 years. I think it was the 1970s construction. But my manager, she was maybe considered old school in today's market, but she just really drove home the attention to details. She was just so focused on the controllables of, this is how an apartment needs to look. This is how your grounds needs to look. She just beat it into my head of just how important, don't worry about the financial reports, don't worry about these numbers, which granted, those are important, but that's secondary to just the absolute basics, which is make sure your community looks great, make sure you're giving great customer service. And that's really something that to this day, I still drive home with my teams as well. Is like, let's get the controllables and the basics down. Then we can worry about, business plan and strategy and things like that. But if you're not controlling those, the rest of it's just noise, really.
Control your controllables. And then that attention to detail, customer service, that's great advice.
You can control answering the phone on the first or second ring. You can control calling everyone back. You can't always control what's going on in the market, but you can make sure you're giving the best customer service. And that's going to have an impact on your performance.
That's really important to think about. Let's wrap things up on a lighter note. What's a hill you'll die on that has nothing to do with work?
When you ask that, my mind goes to food for some reason. So I think I'll throw a bone out to local Detroit and say that a Detroit-style coney dog is the best way to eat a dog.
Oh, okay. That's very interesting. And what is a Detroit-style coney?
So that's the steam bun, chili, no beans in it, and then some diced up onion and a stripe of mustard on there. It's delicious. It's a must stop.
Sounds delicious. Well, Matt, thanks for joining me. I really appreciated you sharing your perspective, talking about renewals as more of a process, not so much a single moment, but a process that really is shaped by the entire resident experience. It was great having you on.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Had a great time chatting about renewals. So thank you again.
And thank you everyone for listening. Please subscribe if you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you next time. Hi, listeners. We cover a lot here on the podcast. If you're enjoying these conversations, make sure you're also subscribed to the MHN Property Management newsletter, where we share even more insights.